All right, everybody, welcome. We're going to get going with the annual meeting. And just a quick word for folks who are on at home, watching the meeting from home. Please be sure to make sure that the volume on your the audio on your device is on, and I would recommend putting the volume up to the highest setting. And on that note, I will introduce our president, Mr. Bennett.
Thank you, John. I'm going to take this off for now. Unaccustomed as I am to not wearing this. Well, welcome everybody. We have a. Can you hear me all right in the back? Okay. We have a smaller than usual group present, but hopefully there are a number of people that are tuning in to the Zoom webinar. I believe there are, and welcome to you that are there, and also welcome to everybody that will eventually view this as a video on our website. I understand that John and Chloe are recording this for posterity. So why don't we get going? We'll start with the I guess the second slide, the annual meeting agenda. If you can see it, they very carefully printed these on both sides of the paper to save paper, I think, and that's a good thing. So there are two parts to the meeting. One is the business meeting, and I'll preside over that. And then after we vote on the new officers and president, the new president will preside over that. Randy, I can't say your name yet because you're not officially elected, but anyway, we'll look forward to seeing who it is. So moving on, do we have a quorum?
Yes, we do.
Okay, we have a quorum. That's great. The next is the nominating committee report. Peter.
Good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the nominating committee, you see the names in front of you, so I repeat them. I want to thank them very much for their help in putting together the slate of officers that we will formally announce to you today, and the slate of governors as well. First of all, we have continued with the objectives that we as a committee put together a few years ago. And these are the objectives that we established for the Board of Governors. First of all, we'd like to have the Board of Governors represent the demographics of the certificate membership. And for us in particular, that relates to age as well as gender. Second of all, we'd like the Board of Governors to be active golf participants. I mean, after all, we are a golf club. And then thirdly, we would like the chairs of the standing committees to be members of the Board of Governors. So it does take a little work to make all these things come out to be in any particular time frame. And again, I thank the committee for the hard work that we put together in making these recommendations to you, our members, for your vote. First of all, the officer slate that we're recommending to you for your vote is, first of all, Randy Van Sickle as president, Tom Sullivan as vice president, Jim Pagos' re-election as treasurer, and Jane Reuter as secretary. So that is our slate for the 4 officers. Our slate for the 4 governors are, first of all, and I apologize, it's not on the chart that you're looking at, but Peter Zotto is renominated for a second term on the Board of Governors. And the new governors are 3 people. First of all, Kate Griffin. Kate's right here. Kate, would you please stand so at least they can see who you are? Kate is on the Finance Committee and a big participant there. The second new governor is Michelle Moore. Michelle's in back there. Michelle, would you please stand up? Michelle will be taking over as the chair of the House Committee. And lastly, he's not here, but that is Scott Seymour. Scott is on the Greens Committee and will continue as a valuable participant with the Greens Committee. So that's our slates, both officers and governors. We ask for your votes now. I guess I turn it back to you, actually,
okay,
for to ask for the votes.
Okay, before we ask for a vote, are there additional nominations by certificate members? If there are none, would somebody please move that the nominations be closed?
So moved.
Second. Nominations are closed. We won't vote. So the report, I'd like to have a report now by the proxy committee, and
there were a total of 166 votes cast. For the officers, there were 164 in favor, 1 against, and 1 proxy withheld. The officers are hereby duly elected. Is that your job?
to what?
Are you going to elect the officers based on that?
I think we will.
Okay. And for the governors, there were 165 for, 0 against, and 1 proxy withheld. Therefore, the governors are hereby duly elected.
Great. So we have a quorum, we have a majority, we have a vote that exceeds the required number. Now we have a new set of officers and a new set of board members. So the only thing left for me now is the president's remarks. I have an 8-page document that I'll read now. Really, my remarks are simple. They're really along the lines of saying thank you. For me, this has been a wonderful journey. I've just finished 3 years as president, and I've been on the board actually for 12. So it's been a lot of fun, and it's been a great experience. I wouldn't trade it for the world. So by thanks, I want to start by thanking the officers. The other officers that I've worked with so closely are Randy Van Sippel, Jim Pagos, and Terry Brown. You guys have been a wonderful, wonderful team, and I'll never forget you, and I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for all of your service. It's really been great. I want to thank the board for its service. It's been a great board. Everybody is really totally dedicated to the club, thoughtful and intelligent in the way they go about making decisions and negotiating and coming up with solutions that are in the best interest of the club. Along those lines, we have a number of committees, a large number of committees with a large number of members. There are something like 150 members that serve voluntarily on our committees. The club couldn't work without them, and I want to thank each and every one of you who have served on committees. The staff has been incredible. We have of the order of 100 staff members, plus or minus, plus during normal years, minus during this year of COVID. The senior members of the staff, I would like to mention particularly John Defoe, Frank, Jason, Gita, Ed McGuire, and Mark Mathura. They've all been terrific, and their staffs working with them have been wonderful. And then, of course, the members have been great. So thank you all. You've made my job a little bit easier and certainly a lot more fun. So I'd like to mention now, I'd like to give special recognition to a few people. I'd like to mention Jane Reuter. She's leaving the board. She's worked on the board for quite a number of years, worked closely with me and others. She has a wonderful background, and she'll be a wonderful secretary for the club. She's been the chair of the 18-hole ladies group. She's been chair of the House Committee. She's been on the Green Committee, on the Finance Committee. She's really covered the waterfront. So Jane, thank you. You're not leaving the board, you're just transitioning from one role to another. I also want to thank Tom Sullivan. Tom, again, is not leaving the board, but he's transitioning to the role of vice president. And Tom, thank you. Tom has been the chair of the Property Protection Committee. He's been chair of the Membership Committee. Then he got all of his training for this job really at the Worcester Country Club, where he was president. So Tom, thank you. He's been a great source of advice for me and others as we've gone along, and it's been great. There are 2 board members that are kind of riding off into the sunset with me, and I'd like to give them also particular recognition. Kim Doggett is one. Kim has provided at least 10 years of work on the various aspects of the hospital committee. You know, that's been a wonderful aspect of the club. I remember hearing that we raised over $2 million, but I heard that 5 years ago. I don't know what it is now, but they keep raising money year in and year out for an incredibly worthy cause. Kim has also been on the Building and Grounds Committee for, I think, about 5 years, and on the board for a number of years. Kim has been a great member of the board. Every time I'm feeling a little bit of trouble and stress, I get a call from Kim, and he's always been very supportive. So Kim, maybe you could come forward. We have a little thing for you. This says Kim Doggett, Board of Governors, 2014 to 2020, 6 years. I will shake your hand, but I'd be violating all sorts of.
Photo opportunity, gentlemen, please. Photo opportunity.
Thank you, Eric. And the other person that I would like to recognize is Jerry Brown. Jerry has also covered a wide range of. I still got this on, don't I? You know, you get used to it. I almost go to bed with it, but I don't actually. So Jerry has worked on a whole number of golf events on the Human Resources Committee, Finance Committee, Centennial Committee with Peter. He's been secretary for 3 years. And Kerry, your solid support, and also, you know, he's a retired English teacher, and well, I tell you, that really helps when you have to write minutes and all that sort of thing. So Kerry,
Are you available to help?
Kerry, why don't you come forward? We have a little thing for you. It says, presented to Kerry Brown, Secretary 2017-2020, with gratitude for your leadership, Eastward Health. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kerry.
Smile for the camera.
One more. I'll just wrap up by saying that I'm enormously confident in the future of the club. I believe we have a terrific organization. We have great leadership. The physical parts of the club, I think, are in great shape. We have a great revetment. Jack Farrell back there, thank you for all the 25 plus years that you worked to fortify the water edge of the club and keep it from falling into the ocean. We have staff housing. Our financial situation is in very good shape. And so it's a great pleasure for me to retire one more time in my life and pass, I don't know whether it's the gavel, the scepter, or the sledgehammer or whatever, to Randy. Randy?
Stay there. So, Eric, I would like to take an opportunity to thank you now, turn the tables a little bit on not just the last 3 years of service that you provided the club, but it's actually been 13 since you were the member of the Building and Grounds Committee and then ultimately took over as chair. But over the last 3 years, it's been great to get to know you better. You've always been exceedingly thoughtful and fair, and I think you've been a good leader for the club. I know, as I mentioned at the board meeting, that you have to catch a lot of spears and arrows around here, and it can be difficult and challenging, but I think you've handled it with grace and dignity. So just thank you for your years of service, and we appreciate it very much. And as a symbol of our appreciation.
That's great. Thank you all. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you for being there, everyone. I find it kind of ironic at 164 to 1. I probably shouldn't have let my wife fill out our proxy this year. But
Thanks, Maggie. But genuinely, I do want to thank the membership for supporting me and the collective leadership of this special place, both the volunteers and the employees alike. It is an honor and a privilege for all of us who serve, so thank you. A couple of weeks ago, Maggie and I were having a drink after playing some golf with Bill and Angela Healy, and I was mentioning to Bill that I was considering the remarks that I would make when I was here today, and he said I ought to take his mother's advice for situations like this, which is to say thank you, make 3 points, say thank you again, and then get the hell out of here. So I intend to follow that sage advice and be brief in my remarks. In the midst of these very unusual times, back in June, I found myself reflecting on the 30th anniversary of my membership here at Eastward Ho. And I was just thinking about the things that I was grateful for. And I just wanted to take you through a brief personal list of the things that I'm very grateful for at Eastward Ho. I'm grateful for meeting Brian Callen, Toby Sanders, and Ray Foster on the paddle courts behind me 31 years ago, and their introduction to Eastward Ho on my behalf, and they're helping me become a member here. I'm grateful for Jack Farrell, another junior non-legacy original member here, who first encouraged me to get involved here by asking me to join the golf committee back in the mid-90s. I'm grateful for all the past club presidents that I've served under in one capacity or another. Ben Goodspeed, Toby Sanders, Kathy Stevens, Doug Hamilton, George Sullivan, Peter Tarrant, Bill Bauer, and Eric Bender. I'm grateful for all the other volunteers who keep this organization running, including board members, committee members, and those who work in the shadows, often going unnoticed, all of whom enhance our enjoyment here. I'm grateful for some of the great characters I've known over the years. For example, Malcolm Downtown-eyed and Jack Bailey, who some of you may remember. I'm grateful for our fine staff, especially our highly competent managers, and I'm grateful for the lifelong friendships I've made here and continue to enjoy each and every day. Much of what I'm grateful for has to do with people and relationships, but I'd be remiss if I didn't publicly express my love and commitment to the magnificent and truly special golf course that we have the privilege to enjoy here every day. We're fortunate now to be working with Kyle Franz as our consulting golf course architect, and I'm very excited to see how Kyle can help us apply our philosophy of continuous improvement to the master plan of our golf course. Recent membership surveys have indicated a high degree of satisfaction with our golf course experience, which is gratifying, but I believe that there is still more room for improvement. Your Board of Governors has given Kyle the task of reviewing the master plan that was presented to the membership in May of last year, and Kyle will be providing us with a hole-by-hole assessment in the coming months. We will also soon be sharing with the membership a piece on Kyle's design philosophy, and we'll also provide a brief video from Kyle featuring his impressions, thoughts, and ideas about Eastward Ho. We have a lot to look forward to. Thank you once again for this opportunity to serve Eastward Ho, and now I'm going to turn it over to John for the General Manager's report.
Thank you very much, Randy, and welcome everybody. And before I get started, I just want to give a quick shout out to Chloe DiTomaso for all her hard work preparing this presentation and setting up the webinar. Thank you, Chloe. And folks that are used to kind of my long-windedness, a very good advisor once told me that it's a lot harder to write a short speech than a long speech. So I'll try to run through this as quickly as I possibly can. He tried, but he didn't succeed. I hope everyone is staying healthy and coping well with the challenges the pandemic has presented our world and our way of life over the past several months. When Eastward Ho began its 98th year this past January, we were reflecting back on another enjoyable season and working on plans for an even better season ahead. At that time, the focus was on fine-tuning operating strategies to ensure that 2020 would deliver another year of great experiences for our members. With the successful purchase of new staff housing, we have cause to be optimistic about our ongoing ability to attract quality seasonal staff in a challenging labor market well into the future. We were teed up to showcase our beautiful golf course by hosting a U.S. Open qualifier, and we were launching a new component of our business model with the acquisition of the Pro Shop merchandise. Our facilities underwent approved upkeep and improvements, and our seasonal recruiting efforts were yielding positive results. In short, thanks to the hard work of the board, committees, and staff, the pieces were falling into place what would promise to be another fine season ahead for Eastward Ho. That all changed in March when we entered into a period that someone described as like peering into a dark cave filled with smoke and trying to see the other side of the wall. Over the days and months that followed, we have navigated a seemingly endless list of unknown and frequently changing operating conditions based largely on government policies and public health concerns. Just a few months ago, while following state and local advisories that included a stay-at-home order during what would have been the on-ramp to our club season, we set out to reopen the club in a phased, prudent, measured, and above all else, safe manner. Along the way, our objective has always been to meet member demand at a level of quality consistent with Eastward Ho standards. With no clear roadmap and more questions than answers, we move forward guided by our core principles of protecting the health and safety of our members and staff, maintaining our golf course and club facilities for the long term, and providing the best experience possible under the circumstances. I won't bore you with a lengthy catalog of the countless operating details, both small and large, that were affected by the pandemic, but I believe it goes without saying that 2020 has been anything but business as usual. Notwithstanding, we've tried to innovate and adapt to the best of our ability. At the onset of the pandemic, the club instituted a number of COVID-19 policies and protocols for both employees and members pursuant to CDC guidance. We took active measures to promote social distancing, required face coverings for all employees, provided hand washing, sanitizing stations throughout the property, and significantly enhanced our routine cleaning and disinfecting procedures around campus. We provided training for all employees in effective hygiene protocols and prevention measures, and established plans for employees and members, including a safe return to work plan should anyone become ill with COVID-19. Among other things, all of our employees have been required to take their temperature daily and attest to being symptom and exposure free before they may enter the workplace. Finally, we have adhered to all relevant sector-specific mandated safety standards issued in conjunction with the administration's phased reopening of the Commonwealth. Out of our roughly 90 employees this year, to date, none has reported any COVID-19 symptoms or tested positive for the disease. For our members and staff, the club continues to promote 5 basic safety protocols based on CDC guidance. Stay home if you are sick or have been exposed. Notify the club if you've been exposed or tested positive within 48 hours of being here. Maintain a minimum social distance of 6 feet from others to the greatest extent possible. Wear masks or face coverings, especially when social distancing is not possible. And self-quarantine if you have travel gear from a state with a higher percentage of positive test results. Adherence to the protocols has been observed as mixed. However, most people have behaved responsibly in light of what truly is a grave health risk for many individuals within our population. I am personally grateful to all of our members and staff who have been supportive and understanding as we have adjusted our operational focus more than ever to the safety and well-being of our club community. Moving on to the finance report and the operating departments. The finance committee was chaired by Jim Pagos, and you can see the members of the committee on the screen. Through July 31st, total operating income is $137,000 adverse to budget. That result is a combination of revenue being $766,000 worse than budget and expense being $628,000 better than budget. Within the revenue result, dues are better than budget by $40,000, primarily due to additional legacy members and conversion of some individual members who became married during 2020 and changed their dues category. Not surprisingly, based on mandated access and capacity restrictions, golf revenue is worse than budget by $198,000, which is a combination of negative variances in guest and house green fees, card fees, bag storage, locker rental, and merchandise sales. Restaurant revenue represents the majority of the negative variance, totaling $607,000 between food and beverage sales, charges, and fees. Again, largely due to capacity restrictions, event cancellations, and other mandates. $467,000 of that loss is actual food and beverage sales, of that shortfall, I should say, and $140,000 is from lost charges and fees. Included in the $607,000 restaurant revenue shortfall is an estimated $270,000 in private event business and events. Within the expense result, all operating saw expense reduction, but the largest component of the $628,000 positive variance is from food and beverage expense, which is $406,000 less than budget, of which $165,000 has been from payroll savings. Moving on to golf operations. The 2020 Golf Committee was chaired by Philip Rosenthal and John Tian, and you can see the lengthy list of names there, as well as the supporting staff, Jason Winslow, Andy Walkley, and Dan Kovac. Due to the delayed opening, lack and or cancellation of events, and limitations on non-member play, year-to-date total rounds remain down versus 2019. However, on a brighter note, total member rounds were ahead of 2019 for the month of July and remain ahead year-to-date through July 31st. Massachusetts ordered the closure of all golf courses for several weeks at the beginning of our season, and Eastward Ho eventually opened for play with restrictions in early May. State safety mandates and advisories continue to influence golf operations and policy decisions, but our golf committee and professional staff have worked to ensure the best and safest experience possible for our members in terms of golf course access, capacity, and activities. Many of the mandated restrictions remain in effect, including single router tarts, other than for 2 members living in the same household, tee time requirements, and touchless golf. But as restrictions have been eased or lifted over the course of the summer, the golf committee has reacted swiftly, and where doing so has provided a safe benefit to our members. Despite facing layers of challenges, Jason and his staff were able to execute many of the club's traditional golf events, albeit under modified conditions, and participation has been outstanding. Thanks and congratulations are due to all of our league and tournament participants and champions, including women's club champion Georgia Purse and men's club champion Roger Hoyt. In his first full year as Eastward Host head golf professional under a new pro shop business model, Jason and his team have overseen a successful transition and delivered a quality retail experience for our members. Although capacity in the shop remains limited due to COVID rules, members who have shopped with us have commented favorably about the revitalization of the space, the service, the selection, the variety, and the value. As a result, despite a delayed opening and other challenges, pro shop merchandise sales are tracking close to budget year to date and generating a positive financial contribution for the club. We did solicit questions before the meeting, and we only received a few, and these are the only questions we have received, and they had to do with tee times. A few members emailed questions in advance of this meeting with regard to a plan for tee times moving forward, and those questions were presented to the golf committee chairs. Currently, the state of Massachusetts continues to mandate tee times, and it's unknown when that may change. With that said, members on both sides of the argument have provided valuable input, and the golf committee is carefully weighing the potential pros and cons from all perspectives. How to move forward with tee times in the best interest of member satisfaction when the state restrictions are lifted is and will continue to be a priority item for the golf committee. While this matter will need to be considered further by the committee, there appears to be a likelihood that on busy weekends such as Memorial Day or the 4th of July weekend, some type of tee time implication may make sense. With regard to a question that was emailed in with about allowing House members who are on the certificate wait list to play during the summer, it is unlikely at this time, as part of the Eastward Ho experience involves open access to the golf course during the summer months for certificate members. But as with all other input and commentary, the committee will continue to weigh these questions carefully. Moving on to greens. The Green Committee, co-chaired by Randy Van Sickle and Ed Benz, the composition is shown there, and obviously ably assisted by Frank Hancock, our golf course superintendent, and Kevin Panos, our assistant superintendent. While golfing was not allowed during the early response to the pandemic, golf course maintenance was determined very early on to be an essential business. Accordingly, our greens maintenance department was able to carry on their work with little disruption and with increased safety and illness prevention measures in place. Notable improvements completed during our preseason involved the restoration of bunker faces and widening fairways. I'm sure these are all improvements that everyone who's played the golf course can see very well. The current condition of the golf course speaks for itself, but more importantly, it speaks for the skill and hard work of our maintenance department under the leadership of Frank Hancock and the steady guidance of the Green Committee. Despite drought and other related challenges, the golf course has been in excellent shape all season. Greens, tees, fairways, and approaches have and remain healthy and disease-free. I'm going to skip that next part, Chloe, and go on to the membership. First and foremost, a hearty welcome to the 28 new members who have joined Eastward Host since last year's annual meeting. And I think if you go to the next slide, we can see their names there. Typically, the new member cocktail reception in June is one of the best parties of the year. And while circumstances prevented us from holding that event in 2020, we look forward to inviting all these folks to a bigger and better party in 2021. The membership committee was chaired this year by Jim Healy and Jennifer Roby, and you can see the committee's composition there. I'd like to recognize Christine Hano in our accounting office, whose assistance with the membership committee has been very, very important. Total initiation fee income to date stands at $798,000, which is $43,000 greater than the total annual budget. In 2020, the club has welcomed 20 new members from the wait lists and transferred 2 members from house to certificate. Of the 20 brand new members, 3 are certificate, 10 are house, and 7 are juniors, all of whom are legacies, defined as someone whose parents or grandparents were Eastward Host certificate members for a minimum of 5 consecutive years. At this point in time, all membership categories are full and all wait lists are closed. Currently, only legacy candidates may apply for membership. There are currently a combined 141 candidates on the wait list, and there are 83 current House members on the golf interest list. Currently, there is no confirmed plan as to when the lists may be reopened, but that continues to be a subject of strong consideration by our membership committee. Moving on to buildings and grounds briefly. The Buildings and Grounds Committee was chaired by Paul DiPiero, and you can see the committee composition there. I'd like to recognize the work of our in-house maintenance staff, Brendan Pickett, our maintenance supervisor, and Chris Everhart, our lead craftsman, who do a lot of the great work that we see happening here around the clock. The Buildings and Grounds Committee chaired by, during the first quarter of 2020, prior to the onset of the pandemic, a number of capital improvements as well as off-season maintenance projects were completed in and around the various buildings, both on and off campus. As with every other element of the club this year, state mandates delayed the opening of our facilities until well into the season, and the pro shop and clubhouse remained closed only to essential employees, and eventually when reopened, were allowed to do so at reduced capacity. Only projects considered non-essential have been delayed, and no deferred maintenance to our buildings or systems will occur. The next report is on the House Committee. The House Committee was chaired this year, co-chaired by Jane Reuter and Michelle Moore. And you can see the committee composition on the screen. It was a very active and engaged and involved committee. And I want to recognize the hard work of our support staff, Gita Gemery, our clubhouse manager, Alita Caparelli, Rashawn Faulkner, Margaret Couture, Chloe DiTomaso, Executive Chef Mark Matherin, and our sous chef Brian Chase. Just over 4 months ago, as the pandemic began to bear down, the club grappled with a number of difficult key decisions. And with regard to the responsible allocation of club resources in light of uncertain future. The restaurant presented potentially the most significant variables and faced the greatest operational implications. In the early spring, while the House Committee and staff were dotting I's and crossing T's on what was a well-developed foundation that included successful seasonal recruiting and new and innovative event planning and significant menu development, it suddenly became uncertain that even opening our restaurant at all in 2020 would be possible. One of the most critical decisions we faced involved whether or not to move forward with our seasonal international workforce. The process for bringing these skilled and experienced workers on board every year involves strict deadlines and commitments with federal agencies that occur in April. Based on uncertainty regarding whether the choice to open the restaurant would even lie in our hands, we made the tactical decision to release the majority of those workers rather than subject the club to potential financial risk associated with this process, opting instead to take our chances with the local labor market if needed. Annually, it should be noted that this international workforce represents nearly half of our employee headcount in the restaurant. When the club's food and beverage operation was finally permitted to reopen by the state more than a month later than planned, we did so deliberately in a gradual, phased, and controlled manner. Our strategy was to observe and evaluate then unknown member dining demand before making decisions with regard to adding incremental payroll expense. As we forged ahead, we expanded our operation from simply offering takeout 4 nights a week to a 7 days a week operation that includes indoor and outdoor a la carte lunch and dinner, a daily server attended halfway hoe cart, daily cocktail and lighter fare service for golfers, and the continuation of our popular curbside takeout program. Unfortunately, our assumptions with regard to the availability of qualified local restaurant employees fell substantially short, and approximately 50% of the required frontline positions in that department have remained vacant all season. That, combined with limited capacity due to mandated social distancing, scale back occupancy capabilities, and layers of additional COVID-related tasks and safety standards, has unfortunately resulted in reduced dining capacity. Accordingly, the Board of Governors unanimously voted to waive the dining minimum for 2020. As we prepare to move forward past Labor Day, the House Committee, along with our F&B managers, are developing plans to continue offering all 5 components of our current member dining options to the greatest extent possible for as long as we can. A fall schedule will be announced in the next few weeks, but members can expect to enjoy eating and drinking at the club well into the fall, albeit potentially under a modified schedule. Once again, we wish to thank members for their ongoing patience and understanding as we continue to provide the best food and beverage offering possible under the present circumstances. I'm almost done. With regard to the property protection, this year involved, the major factors this year really involved the routine monitoring and maintenance of the shoreline. The committee, chaired by Tom Sullivan and Todd Thayer, was able to oversee a pretty quiet year, generally speaking. Thanks to the approved revetment work completed in 2019, our shoreline is more stable and better protected than it has ever been. The annual monitoring process began in August, and the initial shoreline inspection by our coastal geologists and engineers has determined that all the solutions we have installed, including rocks, beach grass, and sand nourishment, are performing as well as, if not better than expected. The Cape Cod Hospital, just a quick few words. The long-standing philanthropic relationship between Eastward Home and Cape Cod Healthcare was another victim of the pandemic. Your club has been raising funds for the hospital for decades, over $2 million in the last 30 years alone. A dedicated committee of volunteers selflessly gives of their time each year to ensure that quality healthcare in our region is always just around the corner. This year's committee, chaired by Hank Holden, and consisted of Mary Ellen Bauer, Kim Doggett, Ed Fitzgerald, Dean Hamilton, Bill Latham, Ken Summer, and Ed Winslow. In a typical year, Eastward Ho raises funds for the hospital through 2 one-day golf tournaments, a gala dinner and auction in the heart of the summer, and a bridge tournament and luncheon in the fall. I spoke briefly with Hank Holden, chair of the hospital committee, as I was preparing this report, and what he told me was no surprise. That despite the lack of actual physical events this year, Eastward Ho members continue to show their generosity. They understood the importance of this cause and wouldn't allow anything to prevent them from demonstrating their support. In short, Hank has asked me to thank you. Hank has asked me to thank you. As Hank often says, if you live on the Cape, whether as a year-round resident or a seasonal resident, if you dial 911, there's more than likely only one place that you're going to be going. Finally, conclusion. Adapting to and adjusting to the challenges and obstacles we have faced as an organization this year has required a concerted team effort. From our officers and governors to our department heads, supervisors, and frontline employees, everyone was called upon to go above and beyond the call of duty. The status quo rinse and repeat routine that club administrations sometimes get caught up in was simply not an option. The crisis thrust our whole team into an entirely new and unprecedented reality that required innovation, creativity, and most of all, hard work. Much of the heavy lifting and execution fell on the shoulders of our truly exceptional line managers, Andy and Dan in the pro shop, Kevin, Alan, and Kyle in greens, and Gita, Rashawn, Alita, and Chef Mark in the clubhouse and restaurant. In closing, I want to express my sincere gratitude and genuine admiration for the incredible efforts of our executive leadership team. Head golf professional Jason Winslow, golf course superintendent Frank Hancock, and finance director Ed McGuire. Eastward Ho is fortunate to have such talented leaders on our team. And with that, I will hand it over to our treasurer.
Thank you, John. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I can't talk that fast. John talked about the results year to date. All considered it pretty good. A lot of other clubs are having a harder time. What I wanted to do was talk about the forecast for the year. But even more interesting, how did our activity in the club change in terms of dining, golf, and the like? So I put together some slides that if you go through with me, you'll be able to follow. The first slide, if you've come to these before, and I recognize a lot of faces, I've used it every time. It talks about the goals of the financial plan. And basically on the right, we develop our operating expenses. That's $7,189,000 this year for 2020. Depreciation of all our plant, that's fixed, that's about $1.4 million. For expenses of $8.664 million. So we developed that to have all our programs, all the experiences that we want to implement. And then we decide how we're going to raise revenue to meet those expenses. And the plan for this year was $7,758,000. And why do we pick that number? We want a book loss in a club. We can afford to have book losses of a little less than $1 million. That's the number on the right. And we want to generate cash at the same time. So our revenues have to be higher than our cash expenses. So we can generate cash that can be used for our replacement reserves. When the elevator breaks, when the pump breaks this year, we have some cash that we don't have to have an assessment at the moment. We can actually go to our bank. So the year started great. This was our plan. And then COVID hit. And we only had 2 issues facing us at that time. We didn't know when anything would open, all for the dining room. And we also didn't know how much activity we'd have. Even if we opened the golf course, would the members want to play? And so we did several scenarios. good case, medium case, worst case, to see what were the risks to the club for the year. And at that time, we generally figured that even the worst case, we could survive. And I'll show you at the end where I predict we're going to come out. So if you go looking at the activity, the next chart, Billy, this shows golf rounds. And if you look, I'm trying to look and see everything. If you look in January through March, April, the dotted line was our budget. And it basically was the same amount of rounds as last year. And if you look at the blue line, which was the actual, we were falling quickly behind. But then once we hit June, July, the membership activity was much greater at Eastward Ho. And in fact, the golf rounds started to be monthly more than the previous year's month. In fact, you can see in August, we're getting very close in September. The reason they separate later is many of the events we were going to have that are included in the budget won't happen. But all in all, the recovery in terms of golf rounds was pretty high. Even more interesting, if you look at who played, total rounds about 17,000. Certificates were a large increase over the previous year. Seniors a decrease. Juniors a significant increase. House about the same. And the big negative is the events and unaccompanied guests. That's 2,300. So if you think about 2,300 rounds didn't occur because of cancellation of events. We actually stayed on track with just member play. So member play was significantly higher than the year before. Other interesting facts, if you go to the next one, is how people play. If you look at the dotted black line, 14,000, that's traditional numbers of cart rounds. And if you look at the actual, which is 9,300, significantly less people taking carts. And obviously they're walking. If you look at the budget for walking was 3,875, and actually we had 7,500 walkers. So the rounds were there, but we had a big dramatic change in people walking and people taking carts. So how did that affect revenue? Well, as you could guess, less cart revenue and less guest fees. Although we had the rounds at previous numbers, the revenue was significantly less, about 2/3. And John mentioned it year to date where it was, and this is what we're predicting for the year. If we look at lunch and dinners, I have the top line. These are covers. They're amounts of meals. And pretty much year over year, we're in the 31, 32,000 a year. If you look at this year, it's a dramatic drop in terms of lunch and dinner. 12,000 is what we're predicting by the end of the year. And most of that outside so far. Again, in terms of predicting how would the members behave, well, they would come to dinner. Our resources were less, but they prefer outside and not inside. If you look at how John replaced that, you can see the dinner revenue is at the top, 337,000. The takeout went from zero to basically $250,000. So a lot of the meals that we lost in the clubhouse, we actually made up a significant amount in takeout. The whole cart was a big hit. That number, 76,000, is higher than ever before. So evidently people like that. John says it's drinking. Well, I don't know that. And then if you look at lunch is pretty low at 82,000. So if you put that together, the food and beverage revenue, it's about half of what the plan was for the year. So you can see that there was a huge impact there. And the question, given that we had less demand, less revenues, how could we mitigate costs? So if we look at the next chart, the last two, this is operating revenue for the year predicted. Our goal, as I talked before, was 7.7. The projection is 6.3. So there's a substantial reduction in revenue for 2020. If we look at the next, how much expense could we cut? We were able to take a $8.6 million budget and bring it in at 7.5. So it was $1.4 million revenue loss, and in terms of how much cost we could cut was $1.1 million. And so that basically was our financial reaction to all of the turmoil in terms of what happened here. If you go back to the last chart, this is the chart I had at first. I showed you in black the objective for the year. In red is where we actually came out. And you can see that the book loss, rather than 900,000, was $1.2 million. Significant, but given the turmoil of COVID, it's pretty good. And if you look at cash, instead of generating 570, we're predicting just under 300. So all in all, I think the members took advantage of the club on the golf course, not so much in dining. And financially, we're going to be sound going into next year. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. We have not received any additional questions from our online guests, but I would just like to open it up now for any of the committee chairs or any of the officers, if anybody has any questions. Okay. Is there any old business that anyone would like to raise that has not yet been addressed? Is there any new business? Peter?
Yeah, hey Randy, we purchased a staff housing earlier this year. Could you give us a brief update as where we stand on that, how it's been going, who's using it, et cetera, et cetera?
I will turn that over to John to give that report.
It's worked out exceptionally well, Peter. Thanks for asking. We purchased 2 houses in Chatham, 2 basically apartment buildings. We were in a little bit of a turmoil. I will say that we closed on March 27th, and everybody knows what was going on there. So obviously the officers and the board were deeply involved in putting that as one of our key decision points early on in the season. But at any rate, we did have a few holdover tenants. Obviously, we did not put the pressure on anybody. There were folks who had no place to go. So we have allowed 3 tenants at this point have decided to stay for an additional few months. We're collecting rent from them. They're good tenants, but our front building is fully occupied by Eastward Host staff, and our back building is prepared to vacate over the next several months, and we'll be ready for it for next year. All in all, it's been an incredibly great investment. Our staff is very happy there, and all good.
Any additional questions from the floor? So with there no new business, would someone like to make a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
So moved. And is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. In tradition, I'd like to ask the new board members as well as the returning board members to please take a moment to have a brief meeting on the Tomlinson room deck right around the south side of the clubhouse.
Sorry, I went up. We'll fix it. Great job.